Your passport, the little blue booklet that proves you're an American citizen, the document you carried across international borders, the government-issued ID that represents every single one of us as a nation. Now imagine opening it up and seeing a politician's face staring back at you. Not the American flag, not the bald eagle, not the Constitution, a politician, one specific politician, one man. That just happened. The United States State Department just announced that it is rolling out a brand new limited edition passport to commemorate America's 250th birthday, and it prominently features an image of President Donald Trump on the inside cover. Not a symbol of the Republic, not the Founding Fathers, Donald Trump on your passport. And before you've even had a chance to process that, California's Governor Gavin Newsom fires back with a parody post announcing that every single Californian will soon receive a special driver's license with his face on it. His face on your ID. Two of the most powerful politicians in America just turned official government documents into personal branding opportunities. And most people scrolling past this story have no idea what that actually means for you, for this country, and for the quiet but dangerous line that just got crossed. Stay right here, because this goes so much deeper than a social media joke. And look, if nobody in your life is breaking this down for you, if your timeline is full of noise and nobody's giving you the actual context behind what's happening, that's exactly why Nation Pulse exists. We're not left. We're not right. We're just real. Hit subscribe right now so you never miss what they don't want you to think too hard about. This is a community of people who actually want to understand what's happening to this country. Welcome in. Now let's get into it. Let's start at the beginning, because the mainstream headlines are bearing the most important details under a layer of political entertainment. Here is the factual sequence of events. The United States State Department, that's the cabinet agency responsible for managing America's foreign policy and issuing official travel documents, made an announcement this week. They are releasing a special commemorative passport in honor of America's 250th anniversary of independence. America 250 is the name of the celebration. July 4th, 2026 marks a quarter millennium since the Declaration of Independence was signed in Philadelphia. Now, commemorative editions of official documents are not unheard of. Countries do special things to mark major milestones. Fine. That part by itself is not the story. The story is what they put inside. According to reporting, these new passports will prominently feature an image of President Donald Trump on the inside cover. Not a historical collage of all 47 presidents, not an image of the Founding Fathers, not a rendering of Independence Hall or the Liberty Bell or any of the iconic symbols that represent American history across the full sweep of 250 years, Donald Trump specifically. Now, before we go any further, let's be precise about what we know and what we're analyzing, because Nation Pulse doesn't do cheap outrage. We do context. The State Department is under Trump's executive branch. The Secretary of State serves at the pleasure of the president. So the Trump administration, through the State Department, authorized a government document, one that every American uses internationally, to carry the sitting president's image. Think about that for a moment. Every time an American opens their passport at a foreign border, at an airport checkpoint, at a customs desk in a country across the world, a foreign official will see Donald Trump's face inside a U.S. government document. That image becomes America's calling card. That image becomes part of your identity as a U.S. citizen abroad. Is that a patriotic act of celebration, or is that something else entirely? We'll come back to that question, because the answer is not as simple as either side wants you to believe. Now enter Gavin Newsom. California's governor has spent the last several months building what can only be described as a shadow political brand. He has adopted, almost satirically, the same all-caps social media style that Donald Trump made famous. The hyperbole, the self-aggrandizement, the dramatic declarations. He's been doing it deliberately, using Trump's own rhetorical weapons against him. And when news broke about the Trump passport, Newsom went to the playbook immediately. His press office posted on X with the text formatted in full caps, mimicking Trump's signature style, announcing that in honor of California's 175th anniversary as a state, the governor would be rolling out a very special driver's license for every Californian, featuring a handsome, high-quality photo of himself, Gavin C. Newsom. The post was pure political theater. It was designed to be funny. It was designed to go viral. It was designed to make Trump look ridiculous by reflecting his behavior back at him, and on a pure social media metrics level, it worked. The post exploded across platforms, but here's what the meme war is hiding from you. Newsom's post was a joke. It was a parody. No actual California driver's license will have Gavin Newsom's face on it. That was satire. The Trump passport, that is real. That is actually happening. That is an actual government document. And that gap, the gap between one politician making a satirical post and another politician actually issuing a government document with his image on it, that gap is the entire story. Because lost in the laughter and the clout chasing on both sides is a question that should be making every American uncomfortable regardless of party. What does it mean when a president puts his face on a government document? Let's zoom out, way out. Because history has a lot to say about this, and it is not comfortable. The practice of putting a leader's image on official government-issued items, currency, documents, identification, has a very specific history, and it is not a democratic tradition. It is an imperial one. For most of American history, the principle was explicit. Living politicians do not appear on U.S. currency. That tradition dates back to an 1866 law, originally passed after Treasury Secretary Salmon P. Chase, yes, the man who authorized it, put his own face on a government currency note. Congress was disgusted. They passed a law explicitly prohibiting living individuals from appearing on U.S. currency. The law was a statement of values. It said, in America, we don't worship our leaders. We don't deify our presidents. The symbols on our official documents belong to the republic, to the people, not to the man who holds power at any given moment. That's why you see George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Alexander Hamilton, Benjamin Franklin on your money, not because they were perfect men, they weren't, but because they are historical figures who represent something larger than themselves. They belong to history. They belong to the American story. A sitting president on a government document is different, fundamentally different, because a sitting president is not yet history. He is current power. He is the person who controls the military, the federal budget, the Justice Department, the regulatory agencies. He is the most powerful individual in the country right now. And putting his face on documents that every American citizen carries, documents that define your identity as a citizen of this nation, that is a gesture with serious symbolic weight. And it is a gesture with historical echoes that should give us pause. Think about the countries throughout history and around the world today where the leader's image appears on passports, currency, official documents. North Korea, Russia under Stalin, Iraq under Saddam Hussein. These are not comparisons to Trump as a person. This is a comparison of the gesture, of the symbolism, of what it means when a state uses its official documents to project the image of a specific leader rather than the shared symbols of a republic. Is America crossing that line? Or is this truly just a harmless commemorative gesture for a once in 250 years milestone? That question deserves a serious answer, not a partisan one, a serious one. Pause for a second. Ask yourself this. If Barack Obama had put his face on a limited edition U.S. passport in 2012, would the reaction be the same? Would the people celebrating this right now be defending it? Would the people outraged right now be defending it then? You already know the answer. And that's the problem. We've arrived at a place in American political life where the same action is either heroic or treasonous, depending entirely on which team is doing it. And as long as we're playing that game, as long as we let our tribal loyalty determine our reaction before our principles do, we will keep sliding toward a place where the rules don't matter anymore, where anything is acceptable as long as our guy is the one doing it. That is not a conservative problem. That is not a liberal problem. That is an American problem. And it is the most dangerous thing happening in this country right now. The White House, for its part, was not amused by Newsom's parody. A spokesperson issued a statement saying the president is focused on saving the country, not garnering recognition. They went on to say that anyone who takes issue with Trump celebrating the greatness of the country during the 250th anniversary celebration suffers from what they called Trump derangement syndrome. Now let's unpack that response for a second. The spokesperson's defense rested on two things. One, that the passport is about celebrating America, not Trump personally. And two, that criticism of it is rooted in irrational anti-Trump bias rather than legitimate principle. Those are not unreasonable political talking points, but they sidestep the core question entirely. If the passport is about America and not about Trump, then why is Trump's image on it rather than an image of, say, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the American flag, the Washington Monument, the Statue of Liberty? There is no shortage of iconic American imagery that could commemorate the 250th anniversary of independence without featuring a living president. The choice to include Trump's image specifically, that was a deliberate decision made by Trump's own administration. It was not an accident. It was not a design oversight. And defending it by saying it's about America while simultaneously having Trump's face as the centerpiece is a logical tension that doesn't quite hold up. That doesn't make it illegal. That doesn't make it an authoritarian power grab by itself, but it does make it worth examining honestly. And that examination is exactly what most political media refuses to do, because honest examination doesn't drive engagement the way outrage and cheerleading do. Now back to Gavin Newsom, because his response deserves its own honest examination too. Since approximately the summer of 2025, Newsom has been on a very deliberate political trajectory. He has been building a national profile. He has been sharpening his brand. He has been positioning himself as the most prominent Democratic opposition voice to Trump in the entire country. And the strategy he has chosen is not the traditional Democratic approach of policy wonkery and measured critique. He has chosen to fight Trump on Trump's own battlefield, the social media battlefield, the spectacle battlefield, the viral moments battlefield, the all caps posts, the self-referential humor, the deliberate provocation. Newsom's team has studied Trump's communication playbook and decided that the most effective counter is not to ignore it or counter-program it, but to mirror it back and expose its absurdity through imitation. Is it working? In terms of attention and media coverage, absolutely. Newsom is arguably the most talked about Democrat in the country right now. He is generating the kind of organic viral moments that money can't buy. But there's a real strategic risk buried underneath all the cleverness. When you spend months imitating your opponent's style in order to mock it, you risk something. You risk becoming what you're mocking. You risk training your audience to expect and reward the exact kind of behavior you're supposedly criticizing. You risk reducing serious governance, the actual work of running the most populous state in America, to content creation. California right now has real problems, not problems invented by political enemies, real ones. The state has a significant budget deficit. Homelessness remains a crisis in its major cities. Housing costs have pushed millions of working-class Californians out of the state entirely. Wildfires have devastated communities and consumed billions in resources. The state's education system shows persistent gaps in student achievement that have not budged despite enormous spending. These are not small issues. These are the bread and butter governing challenges that affect the daily lives of 40 million people. And yet the governor of California is going viral for posting a parody driver's license with his face on it. Now, Newsom would argue, and his supporters would argue, that he can do both, that he can manage California's serious policy challenges while also fighting Trump on the national stage. That political communication and substantive governance are not mutually exclusive. Fair enough. That argument deserves to be taken seriously, but so does the counter question, which is, at what point does the performance swallow the substance? At what point does the brand become the product? At what point are voters watching a politician govern versus watching a politician audition? These are questions worth sitting with, not to condemn Newsom, but to understand him. Because if 2028 comes around, right, and then every signal Newsom is sending suggests he plans to run for president, these questions are going to be on the table, and voters deserve to have already thought through the answers. Let's pull all the way back now, because the passport story and the driver's license story together reveal something about the current state of American political life that is bigger than either Trump or Newsom individually. We are living through a period in American history where the line between governance and performance has nearly dissolved. Think about what we just described. The President of the United States is putting his face on government travel documents. The governor of the largest state is responding with a viral parody on social media. The White House is issuing statements invoking Trump derangement syndrome. The whole episode will generate millions of clicks, thousands of cable news segments, and about 48 hours of furious social media debate. And then something else will happen, and everyone will move on. This is the rhythm of modern political media, and it is designed, whether intentionally or structurally, to keep you in a permanent state of reactive outrage without ever building a sustained, informed framework for evaluating what is actually happening to the institutions that govern your life. The passport story is not just about a passport. It is a data point in a much larger pattern. Across the last several years, there has been a slow but consistent erosion of the distinction between the office and the person holding it. The presidency has increasingly been used as a personal brand amplifier. Presidential communications have increasingly resembled influencer content. Government policy has increasingly been rolled out through social media spectacle rather than formal institutional process. And this is not a one-party phenomenon. Democrats have done their version of it too. The performative resistance, the viral moments designed to generate donations, the hearings that function more as content for fundraising emails than serious legislative oversight. The institution of government around the boring, procedural, complicated, slow-moving machinery of democracy does not generate clicks. What generates clicks is spectacle, drama, conflict, personalities. And so the incentive structure of modern media has warped the incentive structure of modern politics. Politicians are rewarded for spectacle. They are rewarded for provocation. They are rewarded for the moments that go viral, not for the policies that take 3 years to implement and show results in ways that don't fit into a 60-second clip. The passport is spectacle. The driver's license parody is spectacle. And we, all of us, on every side of the political spectrum, are consuming it and rewarding it with our attention. That doesn't mean we should ignore it. Understanding spectacle is part of understanding power, but it means we should never mistake the spectacle for the substance. Let's talk quickly about the legal dimension here, because there are legitimate questions being raised about whether a president placing his image on a U.S. passport has any legal implications. The short answer is complicated. U.S. passports are issued under the authority of the Secretary of State and ultimately the executive branch. The president has significant authority over how official government documents are designed and what they contain. There is no constitutional provision that explicitly prohibits a president's image from appearing in a government document. However, there is a longstanding tradition, and in some contexts, specific statutory law around the use of images of living federal officials on official government materials. The Federal Election Commission has rules about using official government resources for political campaign purposes. If a passport featuring Trump's image were used in any way connected to his political campaign or re-election efforts, there could be legal complications. But right now, the more pressing question is a normative one rather than a legal one. The question of whether something is legal is different from the question of whether it is appropriate. Many things that are legal are nonetheless bad for democratic institutions. And one of the critical skills of an informed citizen is the ability to hold both questions separately, to ask not just, is this allowed, but should we allow this? What does it mean if we do? These distinctions matter enormously, because democracies don't usually collapse because someone does something illegal. They erode gradually through the accumulation of things that are technically legal but normatively damaging, through precedents that get set when people are too distracted or too tribal to push back, through the slow replacement of civic norms with partisan convenience. That's the real history lesson here, not a dramatic warning, not a sky is falling proclamation, just a sober recognition that norms matter. That the informal rules, the unwritten expectations of how power should be exercised in a democratic republic are often more important than the written ones, because the written rules can't cover everything. They depend on good faith adherence to the spirit behind them. When those norms erode, when politicians test them and face no real accountability, the erosion tends to accelerate. The next president does a little more, and the one after that does a little more, until things that would have been unthinkable a generation ago become routine. We are not in crisis today, but the question of where this trajectory leads, that is a question worth taking seriously right now, while there is still time to have the conversation. You might be sitting there right now asking, okay, so what do I actually do with this? I'm one person. I'm not in Congress. I'm not a governor. I didn't design the passport. I can't stop the social media culture war. What is my role here? It's a fair question, and the answer is more important than most people realize. Your role is to be the kind of citizen who sees through the spectacle, who understands what is actually happening rather than just reacting to the emotional trigger of the headline, who can separate the substance from the performance, who can hold politicians, all politicians, regardless of party, to the same standard of behavior and institutional respect. Because here's the thing about power. Politicians calculate constantly. They calculate what they can get away with. They calculate what the public will accept. They calculate how far they can push the norms before there is real accountability. And those calculations are based entirely on you, on what you engage with, on what you reward with your attention, your votes, your donations, your social media shares, on whether you're paying attention to what they're actually doing in office or just to whether they're winning the social media war. The moment that a politician knows you don't actually care about norms, that you care about winning, is the moment they stop caring about norms too. So your role as one person is to care about the right things, to demand substance alongside spectacle, to hold your own side to the same standards you hold the other side to be the kind of voter that makes it harder for politicians to get away with erosion because you're actually watching. You're actually informed. You actually understand what you're seeing. That's what Nation Pulse is built for. Not to tell you what to think, to give you the tools to think clearly, to break down what's actually happening so that you're not navigating the most consequential political era of your lifetime with nothing but memes and hot takes. Because this story, the passport story, the Newsom parody, the social media culture war between the most powerful Democrat in the country and the sitting president of the United States. This story is not just entertainment. It is a window into something real, into the state of our institutions, into the health of our democracy, into the question of whether we still have the collective civic attention span to hold power accountable before the accumulated weight of all these little moments becomes too heavy to lift. Here's where we are. Trump put his face on a U.S. passport. Newsom responded with a viral parody. The White House fired back. The internet exploded. And 2 days from now, half of the people who shared the memes will have forgotten about it, but not you. Because now you know what it actually means. You know the history. You know the precedent. You know what's at stake underneath the spectacle. And you know how to watch what comes next with clear eyes. That's the job. That's what we do here every single day. If this video gave you something real, something you can actually use to understand what's happening in this country, then do 3 things for me right now. Subscribe to Nation Pulse if you haven't already. Every subscription is a direct signal that you want more real analysis and less noise. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think about this, whether you see the passport as a harmless celebration or as something more significant. I read every single comment, and share this video with one person in your life who's trying to make sense of American politics right now, not to start a fight, not to score points, just because they deserve the full picture. We'll be back with more. Stay locked in. This is Nation Pulse.